I think it's on. No? Well, I assume you can all hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. So my name is Heidi Droshak. I am here as a good governance advocate and with Big Money Out Virginia today. We are here for the first ever Democracy Day, Democracy Day 2023, advocating on behalf of campaign finance reform and good governance bills. I will have a little more to say in a couple of minutes, but first we have some legislators here, so we want to give them the floor. So I'm going to turn it over to Nancy first, who's going to set the stage for some of these bills, and then we'll hear from the legislators themselves.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I mean, this is a coalition of great partners, Upvote, Fair Vote, looking at ranked choice voting, ethics reform, and campaign finance. We're really excited. We have 13 great bills in the House and the Senate. Last year we had 24 bills and only 2 sort of managed to creep over the finish line. But I'd like to introduce our legislators and start off with Barbara Favola and Dan Helmer, who are introducing a really great bill on disclosure of independent expenditures and dark money. We really think this is time. This is sort of a basic entry point for good governance. So I'm turning it over to them.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you all for joining us. So my bill is Senate Bill 854, and what it does is it requires those that will spend independent expenditures. So organizations or individuals that are spending money completely apart from a campaign or a referendum effort to actually report any kind of communication that's related to the election of a candidate or the passage of a referendum. So it's electioneering communication. And we think it's really important. So often you don't know who's behind the money. You don't know who's really trying to influence the election. So the bill requires that in a general election, they would have to, I think it's 60 days, and in a primary 30 days before the election actually takes place. If there's any communication, traditional TV, print, or social media, they have to disclose their top donors, top 3 donors. So it's really, to me, it's a consumer protection kind of bill. It's a voter transparency bill, and I think it helps candidates as well, because so often a candidate doesn't know who's behind the effort to promote or defeat him. And with a referendum question, voters certainly have more information about who would benefit or who would be disadvantaged on a referendum question. So I will just conclude by saying that the Coalition for Integrity actually ranks Virginia 46 out of 51 in terms of transparency and accountability when it comes to campaign reform and campaign disclosures. That's not a good place to be, especially when we know 88% of Virginians across party lines and across the Commonwealth, in urban, rural, and all kinds of pockets, actually believe we should have more sunshine on our campaigns. So with that, I thank you, and I will turn it back. Oh, I will turn it over to my House patron, who has the companion bill is what we say, the companion bill in the House.
Thank you so much, Senator Favola. Very nice to see everybody today. Delegate Dan Helmer. I represent the 40th District, which is Fairfax and Prince William counties. I'm an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran and sworn oath to uphold and defend our Constitution at a time when our democracy is under attack, as we saw on January 6th, and we've seen MAGA Republican extremists trying to undermine our elections. What we need to do is restore faith in our democracy and protect our freedoms. And the way we do that is what you are here to support today, which is by passing the kind of reforms that prevent dark money from entering our politics and influencing our democracy. And the bills that Senator Favola and I have introduced are exactly about that. It's about knowing who is trying to influence our democracy. Senator Favola and I are deeply committed to bringing together members from both sides of the aisle to do it, but it is sad today to look around at this press conference and not see a single Republican here. It shouldn't be about party to want to defend democracy, but increasingly there's a party of democracy and there's a MAGA party of extremism that doesn't care about the outcomes of elections and seeks to influence them in any way we can. These bills are part of a program by all of us up here to shine light in our democracy, to give people the opportunity to have their voices heard, to vote, and to know who is trying to seek to influence our democracy. I appreciate all of you standing here in defense of democracy and working with us to make sure that we protect our freedoms for ourselves, for our children, and for future generations. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend and a patron of another great bill, Delegate Vivian Watts.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
if I just may say, Senator Favola's bill passed the Senate yesterday, it was 21.
It did pass on a party line vote. Last year, I had picked up a couple of Republicans on the floor. This year, I did not. So we clearly have more work to do, and I have to believe that this is truly a bipartisan, should be a bipartisan issue. So all of us have to roll up our sleeves and we have to start working across the aisle.
And just to give you, we testified on our bill, and it was for the first time I've ever seen this, Americans for Prosperity were there against the bill. This is common across in Arizona and Tennessee and Alaska, when they have referendums and they want to get rid of dark money. This is the Americans for Prosperity come and say, we feel that this stifles our speech. And Barbara, I would just like to say, you came back perfectly, and she said, this is about the public interest. So I think, we need to get it through the House. I don't know,
We're gonna fight for it. We're gonna fight for it, and we need everybody here to come and say that this isn't about speech. This is about having speech in no other sense provides you the right to anonymity and to seek to influence our democracy in nefarious ways. And so we have an opportunity to make sure that we push forward bills like this that aren't stifling your speech. What they are doing is requiring you to put your name on the things that you put forward, because it's critical to our democracy.
And I mentioned on the floor, why would somebody not be proud if they decided to give money and be one of the top 3 donors to an organization? Why would they not want somebody to know that, right? That's what I said on the floor of the Senate.
Yeah.
Silence.
So thank you, Barbara Favola and Delegate Helmer. We really, everybody, we're gonna share letters with the members of the subcommittee in the House and also the Senate on other bills, but we thank you for all your support for
Thank you,
democracy.
Nancy.
And we have a Republican, we have
There
Tim
you go.
Anderson. And then I'll bring up you, but Vivian, this is a different thing than Virginia elections. We know that basically 40 years of Supreme Court rulings have taken away our rights and stifled our speech. And I'd like to thank Vivian, and I know that Delegate Anderson supports this too. She has introduced a resolution, 242, which asks our House of Delegates to join with 21 other states to support an amendment to the U.S. Constitution which allows Virginia to regulate election spending. No more nationalized elections, no more, we can say how we want this money spent. So I'd like to introduce Vivian and Delegate Watts, and I'd like to thank you very much for sponsoring this resolution.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'm gonna underscore it, at least in my mind, this is the first time, and I've been at it a long time, that I've ever carried a resolution memorializing Congress. I've always felt that it's our business and their business. But without a federal change, everything that we are working for is at jeopardy, as we particularly saw with Citizens United. I've decided to go back in history. When I ran for the first time for re-election, I was cited in the newspaper as being one of the big spenders at about $25,000, 5 digits. I still try to run, and most of my campaigns, I think only one recently, has gone into 6 digits. I stay in contact with the people speak. And I want to put one other perspective on it that really concerns me about the arc of democracy. When this country was formed, it was on slightly different standards. And virtually every one of the colonies, as they became states, the vote was only for landholders, white landholders, male white landholders, but I want to underscore the money. You had to have money to have a voice. Fortunately, and it took a while, I just looked this up last night, it was the last one was finally North Carolina who removed the requirement that you had to be a landholder 80 years after this country had formed. And now I am concerned, particularly with the kind of money that we have been seeing recently, that we're right back into, as Citizens United held, that money is speech. No, it isn't. Individuals are speech. Individuals are voters. Individuals are public servants. And that is why I broke that precedent and said, Congress, please act. We have got to return this to being the elections that voices the people's will. Thank you.
And now we have Tim Anderson, who, when he came into office, we reached out and we said, we care about campaign finance. He was one of the first people to call us, and we had a Zoom call. And so he introduced a couple bills last year, one of which limitation seems to always die a very quick death. And then also another bill that introduces transparency. But this year I'd like to call him up because he has a really interesting bill that prohibits money from foreign influenced corporations. As we know, Virginia is one state that has no limits. The federal government has a limit on corporate donating to donors. 22 other states have it. We have no limitations. But I think it's a very interesting bill. It has precedence in many states around the country, and I'd like you to introduce your bill. Thank you, Delegate Anderson.
Good morning. So I'm kind of a red M&M. I do exist.
Well said.
All right, so the big problem with Citizens United, as far as I take it, is that it really wasn't as much as what Delegate Watts said about individual speech. It's about corporate speech. And really what Citizens United did is it gave corporations a platform equivalent to citizens. And it said they have speech. They have speech in the way that they give. And we have seen corporations buy elections. I mean, it's just no other way to say it. We have seen them dump huge amounts of money into elections. And that's all protected. And I will just say this. I know my friends across the aisle don't particularly like the Dobbs decision, and I understand why. But at least someone had the guts to challenge the Supreme Court. And I think state legislators need to do that. I think we need to start passing laws that may go against what the Supreme Court said. And let's take that case back up and ask the Supreme Court if they still feel the same way. They've made an absolute mess of campaign finance reform with Citizens United. And we should have an appetite for reversing themselves right now. This would be a really good case to test. And we're not going to do it if we don't start passing laws that may challenge what they've done. So my bill's pretty simple. You can't give money to elections if you're a foreign corporation. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. And this isn't so much a China thing for me as it is a Canadian thing. The Canadians really mess with elections in Virginia. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about foreign government influence doing things in Virginia. So my bill says if you're a Canadian corporation, you have ties to a foreign government, you can't donate to us. And that's a restriction of speech, which would absolutely run afoul of Citizens United. And I think it's a very good position to send up and let the Supreme Court really answer the question if they think foreign governments, foreign corporations should be participating in elections. This is the case that could do that. And we'll see if we can get it through. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with my friends on this issue, that we don't agree on everything else, but this one I think we all can particularly agree on that it's a big problem, it's a big mess. So thanks for your support.
And just to let you know, his bill is gonna be heard in the subcommittee 2 of the P&E committee tomorrow at 7 in the morning. So get your pajamas on, but look nice, and you can you can actually put in written testimony. So, and this eventually will be your Delegate Helmer's bill will come up. We're never quite sure when. It hasn't been.
Could be 7 a.m. tomorrow.
Really?
Could be, they tell us.
We'll find out about 8 o'clock tonight.
Okay, well, anyway, we hope that you watch it. It's important that we be engaged in this process, and we want our legislators to know that we are watching. And meanwhile, thank you very much for our champions who came here and
I could stay for about five
Yeah,
minutes.
there's questions.
10 minutes if you have questions, if
Yeah.
not,
It's the
got
Virginia
3 minutes.
Israeli Advisory Board, it's a government agency, it's part of the state government, why is that? I mean, that's a foreign,
what is this?
the
Israeli
Israeli
Advisory
Advisory Board, it's always been curious to me why that country has
I just got here
a
asked
seat
that.
at the table.
There's a history there, so I don't know it, so.
I gotta go. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the legislators. We do have a couple of minutes, so I'd like to introduce our co-sponsors, and again, set the stage. Today is the first ever Democracy Day. Like I said, before we came here, we were rallying out in the Capitol Square, and we will spend today meeting with legislators, testifying in the committees, and generally just showing that we care about these issues and that we want to see progress. Again, I do want to introduce some of our co-sponsors. So just so everybody knows, the co-sponsors for Democracy Day are Big Money Out Virginia, Fair Vote, Upvote Virginia, Common Cause, Represent Us, Clean Virginia, Freedom Virginia, the Impact Project, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, American Promise, and the National Transparency Project, several of whom are here today. So we're going to let everybody come up and speak for a minute, and then if anybody has any questions. So first, I'll start with Nancy. You've already heard from, but she'll speak to Big Money Out Virginia for a minute.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad, I'm really excited that a lot of the patrons of our exciting bills. We also wanted Irene Shin to come. She has a bill looking at ethics reform. So as I said, before we had 13 bills that have been introduced, and I said 24 were introduced last year and only 2 came into law. So I think it's exciting. As I said at the rally 30 years ago, there was a commission report by our then Governor Wilder, who called for ethics reform and campaign finance reform and the imposition of limits. Now we're waiting 30 years. This is an issue that is difficult because it addresses the power base of incumbents that are in very non-competitive districts. So we've been at this for 4 years. We're hoping to get at least a marginal change, maybe 2 bills. But we really need your voice. Especially from those of you who are maybe not in Northern Virginia, we really need your voice, and this is gonna be a long haul. But we hope that we continue to grow and expand, and as Heidi said, let's just be here with even more people. We thought that there would maybe be 10 people, so we're really happy. So Liz, thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Liz White. I'm the Executive Director of Upvote Virginia. We are a newly launched democracy reform organization. We're nonpartisan, we're a nonprofit, and we are guided by the principle of what elevates the voices of Virginia voters. And we have decided for our first focus that nothing elevates the voices of Virginia voters more than implementing and expanding ranked choice voting for more elections in Virginia. Ranked choice voting gives a fuller voice to voters, and it rewards candidates who build consensus and talk to people beyond just a narrow base. The bill being heard today in Senate P&E is sponsored by Senator Creed Deeds and several co-sponsors. It would give parties the option to use ranked choice voting in their presidential primaries. So it is a narrow change that would really make a huge difference. That impacts a lot of voters, and it solves the immediate problem of a lot of wasted votes in a presidential primary. So that's being heard in Senate P&E today, and there are several House bills being heard later in the week. But I am so grateful to be here and so grateful to be part of this incredible coalition, and thank you all for being here this morning as well.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Nelson, and I'm with Fair Vote Virginia, and we've been advocating informally for ranked choice voting since a conversation with my delegate Nick Freitas in 2016. Every year since then, we've been coming down to the General Assembly to advocate for these bills. And in 2020, the first bill was passed, one for Arlington, that gave Arlington the opportunity to use ranked choice voting in their local elections, and the bill that gave all town councils and boards of supervisors in Virginia the ability to use ranked choice voting. So we're thrilled that this year we have 5 bills that are sponsored by both Republicans and Democrats. And in 2022, this is a growing movement. So in 2022, 3 million people had the opportunity and access to ranked choice ballots, and 700,000 of those were for the first time. And 105 elections used RCV in 2022. Voters in 8 jurisdictions voted to adopt ranked choice voting, and 2 local governments passed RCV, one being Arlington for their primaries happening in June for county board. And Hawaii also established RCV for congressional vacancies. So this is a testament to the demand that voters have for this re-emerging reform, because it's not a new idea. We used it, I think, in the late 1800s or early 1900s in many of the big cities in the US. So when people say this is a new idea, this doesn't make sense, voters aren't gonna understand it, you can tell them, it does make sense. It creates majority results, and it's happened, millions of voters in the US, or at least 3 million of voters in the US have been using it. They like it when they use it, and polling shows that they understood and would like to use it again. So we look forward to Virginia having more access to ranked choice voting, and we hope that some of these 5 bills, a record 5 bills for ranked choice voting this session, are passed either today in Senate or tomorrow morning in House Committee, Subcommittee, Privileges and Elections Subcommittee 2 at 7 a.m. So big week for ranked choice voting here in Virginia. Thank you for having me.
From Represent Us.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Bo Harmon with Represent Us. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit group that supports efforts like this to strengthen pro-voter laws, pro-democracy laws in states around the country. And one of the things that we notice as we do this, that there's a lot of people who have a lot of interest in any number of other issues. They're really involved with the reproductive rights issues, or with climate change, or with civil rights for various groups, and those are all important. In fact, we can tell how critically people think about these by the amount of money that goes into these sorts of efforts, and there's billions and billions of dollars that are invested in that. The democracy movement, meanwhile, which provides for all of these others, without a democracy that works, without a democracy that represents the voices of me and you, then climate change, reproductive rights, civil rights, all of those other things are at risk. And yet we give maybe 5% of the amount to the efforts to protect democracy that we give to protect some of these other issues. So it is critically important, it is critically underfunded, and any effort that supports it is vitally important, and that's why I am so honored and proud to be here with all of you today who are willing to step up, come out of your homes at 7 in the morning on a cold winter day to stand up for these issues and fight for these things, and it is so important, and I'm so glad to be here with you, and thank you for all that you're doing.
From Common Cause.
Hi everybody, my name is Lauren Coletta, and I'm leading the efforts for Common Cause in Virginia to establish a state organization. Now, those of you who have been around for a while have probably heard of Common Cause. It's a national organization. It started in 1970 by John Gardner to promote citizens' voice in government. So it's campaign finance reform, ethics, voting rights, these kinds of things. And I'm a resident of Virginia for 20 years. I saw what was happening when they were rolling back a lot of the advances we had made in voter rights. So I called my previous colleagues and pulled myself away from my international work and said, hey, what are we going to do here in Virginia? And so here we are. This was their answer. And so we have been working with our members. We have about 20,000 members in Virginia right now, and they've been active on national issues. And so what we're going to try to figure out, and with the help of these colleagues, is where we can engage those members so that we can make a difference. And so we're still in the early days of mapping out our chapter. We conducted a huge election protection program last fall that engaged a lot of Common Cause members and was very successful. So I'm, more of a national creature, so I'm a newbie here in Virginia, so feel free to give me your knowledge and advice. And yeah, so as we figure this out, I invite your participation, and I thank you guys for your help and support and guidance and for organizing this big event. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. So if you have any questions, feel free to approach me over the next day or so.
And finally, we'll hear from Victoria Higgins from the Chesapeake Climate Action Network.
Good morning, y'all. Victoria, Chesapeake Climate Action Network and CCAN Action Fund. Thank you guys so much for being here. You might wonder what a climate group is doing, sponsoring an event that's really about good governance. What do climate action and a strong democracy have to do with one another? And I was teed up for this a little bit, but the answer is everything. We know that climate action is popular, that it motivates voters, and yet for decades it was impossible because of the undue influence of utilities, and you can guess who I'm talking about, and big oil, gas, and coal in our politics. So, if we have an open and representative and accessible democracy, then we will be able to do what we need to do to put ourselves on a path to climate stability. And we've made a lot of progress, but we've got a lot more to go, so I just appreciate y'all's support. Climate movement is here with y'all. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for those who are attending Democracy Day. Thank you to our co-sponsors. I think as everybody has stressed, this is a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue. We have legislation introduced by legislators from both sides of the aisle. And as has been stated many times, I think Bo teed it up perfectly. These are the issues that are the bedrock of everything else. Until we get to the root of some of these systemic problems, really hard to address the real problems affecting Virginians. So we're hoping the 2023 is the start of some real change, hoping to see some legislative action, and hopefully it'll start, well, hopefully it's already started, but will be moved forward by our actions today. So thank you all, have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.